Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to Noonday Meditation and Contemplative Prayer Power Hour. Why do we call it Power Hour? Well, this is a space where we take refuge, we stop, we take a little time to slow down so we can speed up to empower ourselves with our heart space. And we've been gathering in this virtual sanctuary now for over a year, which I started back before, just when the pandemic began, as a refuge for us to love and support each other through the pandemic. My name is Martin Coward. I'm a spiritual teacher. I'm a prosperity and mindset coach working largely with gay, transgender, and bisexual men. And I'm just so glad to have you here today as we take a refuge today, and we're celebrating extraordinary people. And this month we've been celebrating extraordinary gay, bi, transgender men who do ordinary things that inspire us. And I really enjoy having my fellow coaches on here. I just met, our guest today is Jerry Kajpust.
It's actually a Kajpust, yeah. It's a Kajpust, yep.
The J is silent.
It's a silent J. Yeah.
Is Gary Kajpust. And I just met Gary because he recently joined my new Facebook group, Financial Heart Space for Gay, Transgender, and Bisexual Men. And when he joined, we got on a phone call and we just had a nice, wonderful connection. And I love what he's doing and his approach to working with professionals largely, so they can make the possible from the impossible. And I'm not going to go much further than that, but just to introduce him and say, Jerry, I'm really glad you're here. You got a wonderful story, and he's got some great stuff to tell us, because there was a time in his life when he was in despair and he was in depression, and he didn't really know that there was a better life. There was a way to live an extraordinary life beyond his imagination, until he just let go of his old limiting beliefs. But I will let him tell your story. So again, if you're joining us, please do me a favor and just type your name and say hello into the chat so that I know you're here. I just see a number on the screen. I don't know who you are, and I'd like to know who you are. If you have any questions for us or comments, please put them into the chat. We'll be glad to answer them. And if you're watching the replay, which most people do, more people watch the replay than actually watch the live show, which is fine with me, as long as you get the message and it's helpful. Then also, but if you'll put the comments in the replay, I will come back and I will and I'll respond. Hey, David. One thing you can do is you can there's a little place you can tap that says Give StreamYard. Somewhere in a little button close to the video, I believe we have it posted. It says it will allow you to have your name put up. This is some kind of really quirk between StreamYard, which is a platform there we go. There's somebody coming up. Hey, there's my good friend Ernesto. Hey, Ernesto, good to see you here. There's somebody else, a Facebook user. Again, if you can click on that little link, that'll open up and get permission for Facebook to share your name, that would be grateful. If not, we're just glad to have you here anyway, okay? Ernesto is a good friend. Thank you for joining us today. I hope this is going to be helpful. I'm going to be quiet, which is hard for me to do because I'm a public speaker and I love to talk, but I'm also a good listener. So I'm going to listen for a little while, and I'm going to hear some of Jerry's story, and it's going to inspire us all. Okay, Jerry. So thank you for joining us, and let's see what got you here to us. What got you here today, Jerry? How did you get to where you are today? Tell us a little of your story.
Well, I think my story has been a journey, and I think my life is really a journey. I think that's what I've learned and what I continue to go on. Looking back, I grew up as a small town farm boy, very rural location, pretty much just my family, my brother and I, and, just kind of saw the world as my farm, but I always had this dream that there was something more beyond that. And I never quite knew what that was going to be. And I think that's what has sort of propelled me through life. At one point, I remember talking to somebody, and I kind of like to share this story, that we were talking about different challenges or different things or different opportunities, adventures. And he asked me, have you ever gone hot air ballooning? And I said, no, I haven't done that yet. And I remember he said to me, I love your answer. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, yet. He goes, I love that idea of yet. That means there's possibility. And I think that's really sort of what has driven me through most of my life, is that sense of opportunity and possibility. So, a lot of times when many people are in high school, you have the people that know exactly what they're going to be when they grow up, and a dear good friend of mine wanted to be a doctor, had always wanted to be a doctor, is a very successful doctor. And I was sort of envious of that path that people have, that they just really know and exactly what they're going to do and they do it. Mine has really been more of a journey. You know, I think some of the themes that are really important for me is exploration and learning. I love the term Kaizen, which is a Japanese word meaning lifelong learning. And I think that really translates also to what it means to be a coach, is we're constantly growing, we're constantly learning, and there's new opportunity. And we learn, you know, from our own experience and our own inquiry. I'm a kind of a Netflix documentary junkie. I remember in the last month, I've watched everything from Eastern philosophy to the art of Islamic religions, to the Netflix show on Shtetl, which was about the Orthodox Jewish community in Jerusalem. And so there's really that sense of what makes people tick, what makes people live, what inspires them. And then I learned from that as well. And I think what I see is everyone really kind of looks for that sense of, what is it I want? How do I kind of find more in my life? And how do I kind of build that adventure and that sense of growing and sense of learning? I had a spiritual director. I was in a seminary for a while as part of my journey. And I remember one of the things that she had said to me is, there's that point where you're on a cliff and you see the other side, and you know you can make the leap, but you still have to take that first step and make that leap across that cavern. It just doesn't happen. And I think that's happened a lot. As a kid, my goal was to be a rockette, but I couldn't quite get there. And I don't quite have the right anatomy to be the rockette. But part of it was always living in New York was a dream of mine. And it took me a while to get here. I moved here in 2007, which is where I am right now. But through that journey, I've lived, you know, in several cities and have done several occupations. And as I kind of say, that lifelong learning, I've looked at many different sort of career paths or learnings. I mean, I've studied interior design, I've studied accounting, got my master's in clinical psych. I've done, and like I said, constant kind of the LinkedIn learnings and online learnings that are so available now. But it's about that sense of continuing to be open to what's possible. And it sounds like I'm, you know, without fear and let's just do this and let's keep going. But there is that piece that's always like, is this going to work? How can I do this? Am I really strong enough to be able to do that? And I think that's one of the things I really want to work with people, so that they can feel that sense of opportunity, that sense of openness, expansiveness for their own lives, is how can I really develop and grow stronger into what I want? Or how can I build on my life now, but get to that next step, that next journey?
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about you're relatively new in the coaching world. And in our conversation, you said that there were a few years ago, you were kind of living in a place of somewhat loneliness and despair, maybe even depression. Tell me a little bit about that, and what happened that sort of freed you from that way of being to becoming, to really, I would imagine, to where you are now. Tell us a little bit about that journey from being in that place of loneliness and despair and depression to being living a life of possibilities and opportunities and joy.
Yeah,
well, that's a cycle. I think it's a cycle that we go through. I mean, when I was opening my restaurant 10 years ago, I went through the same cycle, and then that got burned. And then so we go through cycles. But I'm interested in the last cycle of the one that got you from wherever you were, that was no longer satisfying you, to where you are now as a coach and helping other people.
So kind of what brought me to that space is I was doing corporate coaching actually for about 10 years with Hertz Corporation. So I was doing a lot of internal coaching and sales and management, sales coaching, working with sales reps to kind of build clients and build their accounts and grow in their sales skills and also understanding of themselves. That job ended for me in 2007. So I moved to New York, hoping to, again, be a coach. And that's when 2007, the economy sort of tanked. And that really didn't happen. So now I'm in New York. What do I do? You know, so I started looking for volunteer opportunities and looking for different ways of kind of connecting with the community here in the city. And eventually started as a volunteer at Leslie Lohman Museum, which is a museum that focuses on art for gay and lesbian when I started with it. It's now really expanded to queer art, but that was a job that I took that I really didn't know much about the art world. I didn't really know about running and working for a nonprofit, but I said, I enjoy their mission. I enjoy what they do, and let me see how I can contribute to them. And I spent 12 years there, so apparently something worked out well. And I did everything from helping to hang exhibitions to then learning marketing, how to write grants, how to network, how to build community. And then I was starting to get to a point where it's time for a change. And I think that's where that loneliness and depression sort of comes in, is after a while, it's time. There's like an inner voice in me that says, it's time for something new and something different. And I don't always know what that is. I started working with a coach, and we looked at going back into the field of coaching and taking all of my experience and what I've learned and how to actually share that with other people so they can sort of come on this journey as well and say, you know, I'm sort of stuck. I want to do something different. I don't know what that is. I don't know if I'm prepared for it, but really encourage them to take that risk, take that chance and say, let me give this a try. You know, the worst thing that happens, it doesn't turn out like you want it, but you never lose the learning. You never lose the experience. It always builds on something that will move to the future. There's an amazing book that I read several years ago by Owen Meany, or John Updike, called The Prayer for Owen Meany. And it's all about this little kid who goes through all these little adventures of playing ball and running here and going there. And it's like, why am I learning all of this stuff? Why am I doing all of this stuff? And then I hate to be a, what do you call it, killer to tell you the end of the story. But what happens at the end is all of these skills that he learned, he has to save the life of another person. And the only way he can do that is to like throw this ball against the window and bounce it and save it. And by all of the experiences he learned, sort of culminated into that one moment in his life that was really important, where it all came together. And I kind of see that working for me, is like all of this, what I've experienced, what I've learned, what I've shared. Now, as I kind of look at what I call, or what Jane Fonda calls, the third chapter, I'll be 63 tomorrow. It's my birthday tomorrow. So I'm looking at that. But she calls it third chapter because now at 60s, you have like another 20 years left of your life. What am I going to do with that 20 years? As a child, I remember my dad retiring at 62, and I think, well, you know, that's the end of life. Well, for me, that meant it ended, and that's not the case. So now that I'm 63, what is that third chapter? How do I find out what that's about? And how do I kind of move that forward?
Yeah, I love that. Richard Rohr wrote a book that I read of a similar nature. It's called Falling Upward. It's about the second half of life. We spend the first half of life acquiring and growing and building and having things, and that's all good, and reaching certain success levels and doing all those things, only get to the top like you did, something that was satisfying. It's not like we were on a bad, we were satisfied, but we get to a point where it's like, wait a minute, this isn't really, it's not really meeting my needs anymore.
Right.
There's something deeper inside of us that's calling us. I call that spirit. Mm-hmm. I call that the soul. So then we go into, then we have an experience like you did. Was like, well, what you go and you meet with someone. Maybe it's a spiritual teacher. Maybe it's a coach. Maybe it's a rabbi or just a trusted friend. And you say, you know, I'm just not feeling loved anymore.
Right.
And if it's somebody that's got a little spiritual understanding of the world, they can say, well, maybe you need to maybe it's time to look at your second half of life. Mm-hmm. Maybe it doesn't matter what age you are. You can do this at 30. I mean, I think Oprah Winfrey did it and she was 17, but I think, you know, she wanted the hell out of the South, out of the South, because she knew there wasn't much prospect there. But we hit this point in our life where we've hit a ceiling, and the soul is yearning for something more, and it wants to fall upward. And I use the word fall upward because we go up into a higher level of consciousness. We begin to cultivate our spiritual realm, the creative part of ourselves. So we take all those life experiences and we begin to implement them into a newer way of being and being able to share it with others from a higher level of consciousness.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of what probably another spiritual director. I have lots of what do you call, anecdotes and stories, but I think that's what gets us through life, are those little moments.
Oh, exactly.
I remember I remember someone once said to me, the only thing that's holding you back from your next greater good is your present good. And it's a really interesting way of looking at it. So not necessarily what you're doing is wrong or bad or indifferent, but when there comes that sort of inner something, whatever you want to call it, inner quest, inner restlessness, inner curiosity, whatever those words might be, that's leading you to kind of what that next step to be.
Yeah, it's a yearning almost. It's a yearning that says, and it can almost be like a moan. It can feel a little. It can be. It's uncomfortable. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you know you're not in the right place. You know you're not doing something right. And there's a yearning inside you. It's pulling you into something deeper into your heart, into your space, so that you can actually have the courage to break loose of that old whatever it is that you thought you needed to do, that you were limited by, so you can fall upward and you can begin to live more from the spiritual realm than from the physical and the mental realm.
Right.
And as a spiritual teacher and as a mind, that's and you as well from our conversation. That's why I wanted to have you on here, is that you get that you're in that stage now of falling upward. Right. And I think what I'm going to make up a little bit about it, I just met you, but it sounds like to me from what you're talking about, is that you're helping other people fall upward. You're helping other people who may have reached a certain plateau in their world, and that since you work with professionals in their professional world, particularly, and what served them before is no longer serving.
Right.
So, and they don't know how to get out of it. That's what you said. The key to your conversation, your story was, I went to a coach. He said, well, maybe you ought to go back and look at something you looked at when you first came here.
Right.
That triggered, oh, well, that's what that yearning is in me.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting is that there's one of my clients I'm working with, two things. One of the things is she always had trouble figuring out, why does she not feel adequate enough? Even though she's a successful director of a nonprofit, but still kind of says, I'm not doing enough, I'm not working enough. And so part of our conversation at that time is I said, okay, let's look back. When did those feelings first happen? When do you, if you take it all the way back, when do you remember starting to feel that way? And she went, I think when I was 7 years old with my parents, and not thinking that I was doing enough, and not being good enough, and not being smart enough. And so we took a moment, and I said, so let's go back to that child and let's talk to her, and not like tell her, but put her in a chair in front of you. And what would you say to her now, knowing what you've done and what you've accomplished? She's running, she finished a degree in fine arts. She is the director of a nonprofit, which she wanted to do. But having that conversation of saying, you're good enough. You've done enough. You know, what you have is what's important. It's not what you don't have, it's what you have. And that's really what I think too often we look at, especially with a lot of the assessment tests that people take, or the, questionnaires. It's like, well, you're strong in these areas, but you don't have this, and you don't have this, and you don't have this. And what happens is we end up focusing on what we don't have, rather than focusing on what we have and really building on that, because none of us have everything, but together we have it. And so what are the skills, what are the strengths that you bring, or I should say I bring, or I would help my client bring, that really makes them empowered and makes them move forward? I think
exactly, because what I'm hearing in that is that when she learned at 7 that just being herself wasn't enough. Right. She had to go out and do, and that's okay. That's the first part of what I was saying before. You have to go out and do all these things, and part of the drive is to sort of prove to the world that you are enough, and that's okay. Right. And we acquire things, we acquire cars, but when we become obsessed with the acquiring of things, because we get to the point where we keep acquiring more, and it's not being any more satisfying. Right. And she's reached all these plateaus of success, but now she's plateauing at all of them. Right. And the conversation you were having with her was saying, okay, that's what you learned, that you had to do all, and you did them all. Mm-hmm. Now you're in that second half of life where you can just be yourself, because you are enough. You don't have to prove to anybody that you're worthy or valuable. You look at all that you've done, and now you can just show up for people and help other people be themselves, be whatever she's doing. You get to be yourself more authentically and just simply show up.
Right. And I think that kind of emulates sort of me as a kid. You know, I grew up very lonely, small. I also grew up very heavy. So there were all the issues around that. And, you know, dealing with kind of some of those issues of being the fat kid that nobody wanted to play with, nobody wanted to be around. But yet, what skills can I develop around that? And those are the things I think that really brought me through now is sort of a real universal appreciation for people who and where they are. And I think that's really the important thing to remember. And also, those critics, if you partner with them, a lot of times those are the things that actually have given you the energy or have given you the strength or the impetus to go beyond or to strive to do better, to be better, to learn more, and not being better as far as you, like you said, getting the bigger house on Park Avenue or getting the penthouse, but how you learn to grow within yourself, to share your skills, your abilities, your talents, your insights, and really share that with other people and then draw that out from other people so that they can also embrace their own.
Yeah, I would say you're spot on. And I would even just say it's really about not being better, but being less.
Yeah.
Doing less, because you are and really stripping away all those beliefs that tell you, you know, I hate the idea of self-improvement. You can't improve yourself. I much prefer about self-love and self-acceptance. And that's really what, and that's what you were telling her. Look at all that you've done. How can you love yourself more just as you are? How can you be more how can you just accept yourself knowing you got everything you need? You were born with everything you need to create a wonderful life for yourself. Yeah. If you don't know that, you've got to go through that first stage first, but that's exciting. It's exciting. It's exciting to live in this space. It's also exciting to have other people get here too. That's the most fulfilling thing for me about being a coach, is helping people get those aha moments, like, oh wow,
right.
I don't have to do anything else ever. No, you don't. Yeah. You don't, because when you realize who you are, the doer is that life force in you. All we have to do is get out of our way and let that spirit loose.
Right.
And I call that spirit Joy the Wise Woman.
Okay.
And I get in touch with her every single morning. That's how I start my day. Her name is Joy the Wise Woman. And when Joy the Wise Woman, she's talking to you right now, as a matter of fact, and she's listening to you. When she's plugged in, and when I'm out of the way so she can be present, that divine presence that we all have within us is not something not a gift that I have, particularly every human being has this.
Yeah.
But when I get out of the way and quit Martin trying to do so that she can do, life is just a lot more exciting, a lot more fun.
Yeah, definitely.
And the doing is spirit, is life doing. I'm just the vehicle that's allowing this broadcast, for example. I'm just, for whatever it is, I'm just allowing myself, surrendering my own agenda, which used to be always about trying to make money. I don't make any money doing this. That's not why I do it. I do it because I want to love and support people through this crisis we've been through.
Right.
And that's a lot. That's just a relief. Joy wants to do that every day. And I just get out of her way and let her go. And it's a lot. And the more I do that, the more I let go of the idea that I'm controlling anything, and I don't control anything. The more the idea that I need to know what's going to happen, I don't know anything. And the more I let go of the reins and let Joy the Wise Woman drive the bus, we're having a good day.
Yeah. For me, I would say this would have to be my joy.
There you go.
Elmo. My partner had called me that once. We were kind of laying in bed, and I remember he tickled my stomach, and I was starting to giggle. He goes, "I have my own Tickle Me Elmo," and that name sort of has stuck with me. And I think what's really cool about Elmo is that all he wants is for people to be happy and to live their best selves and to be positive. And that's pretty much what he supports in all of his thinking, his persona on TV. And I think that is the spirit that I sometimes think of as, what would Elmo do? How would he approach this? How do you keep that smile, that joy, that happiness, that fun? And it doesn't mean that life has no challenges or has no worries or any of that. Those are there, and those are necessary as well, because, you know, as you look at, if every day was sunny, that would mean there'd be no rain, that would mean there'd be no plants. You need both of the weathers to be able to do that, and I think that's what we need in our lives.
Yeah, we have the dark and we have the light, and we need both, because we can't see the light without the shadow.
Right.
Against, so we can be thankful for that. And so I cannot believe that we are already. We got about 5. I see. I was looking at the thing. What time is it? We got 4 more minutes. Good. Keep going. I'm excited. I'm enjoying this. Let's keep going.
So I guess the other thing you kind of mentioned is the idea of success. I think there's a whole movement also that's coming out that I've noticed, the idea of minimalism, and people looking at what they have around them. And one of the stories, there's a Netflix show. There's people want to look at it on minimalism. There's 2 films, but it's about this one guy who said, "I'm going to be successful. I've got the great job. I've got the apartment. I've got everything else. But this isn't it because I still want something else." And a bigger apartment isn't actually going to be that something else. And how you start kind of divorcing yourself from what you have to really look at what you have, in a sense.
To enjoy what you have.
Right.
Yeah, to really appreciate what you have. I think I love that you said that, because I think that's, if anything we all got out of being in this big timeout in the last year, is we've slowed down just long enough. We've all had just to say, wait a minute. At least I know I have, and a lot of people I talk to have, is that, wow, this thing called being a human being is pretty miraculous.
Yeah.
And this earth that we live on is amazing. I'm amazing. My life is amazing. And I have everything I need. I don't need to go out and buy a fancy car. I can enjoy them. I mean, I love one of those fancy new electric cars. That'd be great. Yeah. But I'm not sitting around worried about when I get one. My biggest thing right now is since I should become a coach, I had to take a little bit of a backseat in my income.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's beginning to pick back up again. But the first thing I want to do is take care of my home. I want to put some paint on it. I want to fix some repairs, and I want to give my home that I love some tender, loving care, because I'm grateful for it, and it's been holding up for a while. But now that I'm finally beginning to make some real money again, having some fun doing it, I want to fix up my house. I don't want to build a house. I want to show some love, give some love back to the house that's been taking care of me since 2005.
Yeah,
that's what I want to do. That's where I want to spend my money right now.
And so one thing that I would sort of share that has really kind of helped me on my journey since the beginning of the year is I started meditating, which I really hadn't done before. I'm not getting any money, so I'm not promoting, but there's an app called 10% Happier, and they do guided meditations, which I always had this trouble of meditating. Listen to the trees or listen to the rain, and I visualize, but that's not where I am. What I really like about these meditations is they look at more thought patterns and the whole idea of thought and feelings and what they are and how they can come in and come out, and they don't necessarily have to drive you. The one constant is your breath, and that's the real thing that grounds you. Thoughts come in as you listen to them, and you kind of realize they'll come in, they'll come out. And I like the way they talked about feelings. It's not that I'm sad. It's like if you're talking about weather, it's raining out, it's raining, so it's sad. So it's a feeling is a little bit more separate from you, so you don't get caught up into the whole anxiety around it. And I think that's a real interesting piece that I'm starting to learn a lot through meditation. So that's
yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. One is a wonderful segue, because we're about to do some meditation here right now, about 2 seconds. But I love the show about feelings, because it's the feelings. One of the things that I learned is the feeling of it's almost like a feeling of moaning. It's almost like it brings us deeper. It's like a deep grief. It brings us into our heart space. Those feelings that we think are unwanted, like maybe fear, for example. If fear and excitement actually feel very similar. Going back to the story about the balloon, jumping out of a hot air balloon and going up and whatever that was sort of. But because we get confused, and I know that when as we're evolving, going into higher levels of moving out of our comfort zones constantly, which is what we do, then we need that meditation to quiet the mind, quiet the thinking, and so I don't know anyone's ever been successful that didn't meditate or pray.
Yeah.
It is because that is the part of us that's successful, is that what I call Joy the Wise Woman, that creative genius within me, that spirit, that life force within all of us when that's alive, and the best way to access that is through prayer and meditation.
Right.
And that's exactly what we're going to do right this minute. So if you'll be my audience, because it's always nice to have someone, you'll just sit up tight. So I'm going to show you how. Just sit up, and we're going to start by putting our hands in the air. Just put your hands in the air. And we're doing that because I want to do it for two reasons. One, do you think your muscles lifted your hands? No, your muscles obeyed the command of your heart space.
Yeah.
If you weren't alive, you would not raise your hands. Everything we do is because we obeyed the life force. We've aligned with that. So I just do that. One, I want to celebrate gay, bi, transgender men right now. I want to celebrate Gary. I want to celebrate me. I want to celebrate you being here. And I want to raise our hands. But I also want to bring us into the focus of just how close our divine nature is. It is, we are. It is our essence. So you can put your hands down now and just put them in your lap. And we're going to do a form of meditation, a form of prayer. It's called centering prayer. And what it is to bring all our focus of the mind's thought and all that external stuff going on there into our heart space. The heart space is that still point within all of us that connects us to life. It's like a beacon, if you will. It's connecting us to all of life. It's how we're connected to each other. And one of the ways to do that, like you just said, is through the breaths. So just begin to relax your shoulders, relax your arms. And when we think, you're not going to stop thinking. People say we're going to meditation so you can stop thinking. Don't fight yourself. Your brain's going to think. That's what brains do. They think. They're going to always think. But you can slow it down a little bit so you can have a little wiggle room.
Yeah, definitely.
You can have a little space. And I'll tell you a little secret that I learned a long time ago. When we're thinking, the backs of our tongues vibrate slightly. As we think, our tongues vibrate. So what we can do is we can reverse engineer it. If we slow down the tongue, we can slow down the thinking.
Interesting.
So I'm going to show you a little technique. What you can do is you can take your tip of your tongue and you can rest it on the roof of your mouth just behind your two front teeth. Slightly part your lips so you can breathe through your mouth and your nose and relax your jaw. And just do that for a second. And just breathe naturally and notice the breath gently massaging your tongue as you breathe in and breathe out. Effortlessly breathing in and breathing out. Slowing everything down by massaging the tongue with your breath. Just relax and begin to go inward. Begin to focus the mind on the breath, the massaging of the tongue, the traveling of the breath, the belly muscles and how they're used to pull the breath deep into you. Just notice the breath, the rise and the fall of your rib cage. The expansion of your belly. And just think about using your belly to pull the breath in through the nose and the mouth, massaging the tongue, opening the heart some more, and pulling that breath deep into your belly as an anchor. It's a way to anchor your spirit inside your body. And just breathe. And we're going to do 3 belly breaths. Create a little bit more space. And that little bell is just a little wake-up bell to bring us conscious that we're meditating. You can use the vibration of the bell to take yourself a little bit deeper inside. So with your belly muscles, And your tongue gently relaxed against the top of your mouth behind your front teeth. You're going to pull the breath in through the mouth and the nose, over the tongue, and down into your throat. Open up the heart. And you're going to pull that breath deep and expand your belly and hold it down there for a few moments. Just a second or two. And then we're going to release it. You ready? Let's do the first one. Ready? Mm-hmm. Breathe it in. Breathe it down a little. Hold it a little bit further. Expand it. Pull it down a little deeper. Really anchor it in. And then let it go. Just let it go. And as you let the breath go, let go of every thought, every opinion, every judgment, every story, every worry, everything. Hold on to nothing in your mind. Just gently let it all go. Create some space for new creative thought. And just relax for a moment and breathe. Becoming more and more conscious of where you are and what you're being, who you are. And you might notice some emotions in your body. We carry our emotions in our body. So as you're breathing and going inside and exploring your inner landscape, look around for some emotions. What are you feeling right now? Are you feeling some fear? Are you feeling some excitement? Are you feeling some joy? Are you feeling some shame? Whatever you're feeling, feel it. Just feel it. Allow whatever that emotion is to pull you more deeply inside yourself. Find the center of the emotion. Find the edges of the emotion. Where is it in your body? Get intimate with that as we get to know the interior landscape of ourselves with our emotions and our breath. And breathe into that space. Breathe some love and some life into that emotion. You're going to do another belly breath. So with your belly muscles, pull the breath in through the nose, down the throat, massage the tongue. Open the heart and pull it deep into your belly. Ready? Expand the belly a little bit more. Pull it down a little bit deeper. Hold it and let it go. And let go of any beliefs or thoughts of which you think are good or bad, right or wrong. Especially anything in which you might feel ashamed. Let all that go. Just let them go. Hold on to absolutely nothing. Allow yourself to just be still in the silence of your own beingness, of your own heart space. Pure love consciousness. Infinite love consciousness poured into a finite form called a human. We're going to do one more belly breath, and then I'm going to be silent for the duration of the meditation. You're going to hear some interval bells along the way that wake us up from our thinking, our sleeping, our planning. The invitation is just when you hear the bell to, and I'll remind you to just let anything go and fall back into infinite love. So here's the last belly breath. With your belly muscles, pull the breath in through the mouth, through the nose, massage the tongue, open the heart, and pull that breath deep, 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 deep into your gut. Hold it. Hold it like you've been holding on to everything in your life and just find, just let it all go. And just allow yourself to fall into the natural breathing and allow your mind to focus on the breath and the massaging of its tongue. There's the sweet sound of that wake-up bell to wake us up from our sleeping, our thinking, our planning, our worrying. And the invitation is just to smile with gratitude and let it go and fall back into that infinite love consciousness, pure love consciousness that we are. There's that wake-up bell, waking us up from our sleeping, our thinking, our worrying, our stories. And again, just let them go and fall back into that spaciousness, that infinite, loving arms of the Divine Mother. And that's our final bell, bring us back to the real world, the material world, we'll call it. Welcome back, Jerry. Welcome back, audience. How's everybody feeling?
Doing very well.
Very good.
Very well. Nice meditation, Martin.
Thank you. It was a nice meditation. It was a nice meditation. I do this. I started doing it because my clients wanted to know how to meditate. So I thought I'll just bring my meditation practice online and show people how to meditate. And that's how I got started. And I do this as much for me as anybody.
Yeah, and I think that was always my question too, until I started listening to the app and realizing you can't really meditate wrong. the only wrong way to meditate is not to do it. That's
the only way. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just about getting still and being still. Yeah. And there are all kind of different techniques. Some people like guided. Some people don't like guided. I try to do a little combination of both. I know 20 minutes is a long time for people who don't meditate. So I typically lose about 80% of the audience when we go into meditation. That's okay. I mean, and there are those that come because they want the meditation, and then there are those who want to come and just hear the conversation. And that's okay. We're here for anybody what they want, and so that's the point. So I want to just ask you one question, and I want to ask you about if people are in that place of they're not quite sure what they're doing, then maybe they're not depressed, maybe they are, but maybe they're just in that place where they don't really see possibilities of a different life. What would you tell them to do? What would be the first thing that you would suggest that they do to get unstuck, we could say?
I think what I would suggest is to just sort of take that time to sit with yourself and be quiet. I think we don't do that enough, especially with social media and all the different distractions that are so easy to happen. And do what works for you. You know, it could be in the morning. I'm not necessarily a morning person, so that's not my wake up time to do that. But during the evening, I mean, I'm like a late morning person, like 11 and 12 at night. That's kind of when I find a really sense of calm and quiet. So that's when I do sort of a lot of my thinking and processing. Another great thing is to start journaling, just to write down your thoughts. And if you do it daily, that's fine. If you don't, but just to kind of get out of your head and get some of that stuff moving forward. And then the third one, of course, is work with someone like me as a coach to kind of help you explore those different areas.
Yeah,
you know?
at least have a conversation with a coach. And and I would say make sure one of the things that I'd always think is find someone who's a little bit spiritually based too.
Yeah.
Which you very well both are. Find a spiritually based coach to help you, because you really want to have someone to coach you into that higher level of consciousness and whatever that looks like. And he's been talking about it. We all use different language for that. Yeah. But I think spiritually based coaches to me are the most, like therapists for me too, is my, you know, those tend to, from my, as a spiritual teacher, and I'm going to give you always to say, make sure that you're using a spiritually based person to guide you through life.
Right.
You want because you want people to guide us into that spiritual realm of consciousness, and that's why I just make that suggestion. So that's
one of the things to kind of emulate on that is I used to teach a lot of Stephen Covey, his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, in different pieces. But I think what's really I learned from that is the idea of the 4 components that we always should be aware of in our life. You know, building our mental capacity, which I probably have gone farther on that one because of my love. But emotional, social, but also spiritual. And spiritual can take a lot of different forms. It could be walking through an art museum. It could be walking through nature. And I think when you broaden the definition of spiritual, that's where it starts opening up possibilities. Could be going for a run. That could be very spiritual for some people. So it's really what sort of taps you into that other side of yourself, or that inner self that's not in the brain, that's not in the heart, but that somewhere encompasses all of that. And I think that's the piece to connect with. And I think that's, especially through COVID and all of what we have experienced in the last year, that's even more critical, to be able to sit with yourself and be okay with that. And
yeah, I agree. Bring that spiritual awareness into everything you're doing, like walking in the park, things that are easier, But if you really want to spice up your sexual life, bring your spiritual awareness into your sexual activity, and that will take on a whole new dimension. I'll tell you, it makes the old physical mental part really feel lame compared to the spiritual realm that we can get into when that sexual energy really takes over. So don't be afraid. And that's what I talk about, is and why I work with gay men, because that queer nature, that's our creative nature. That's the spark of us, and we want to love, embrace, and get that intimate with that in all sorts of ways. Allow that feeling to come out in nature. It's certainly allowed to come out in sex. I mean, for goodness sake, and a partner who's willing to explore that spiritual domain with you on a sexual adventure is pretty amazing. So I think to find one of the words as a Christian contemplative teacher is to find the universal Christ in everything.
Yeah,
in your dogs, in your cats, in your sex life, and all that, everything. And when you bring that into it, everything enhances. Everything gets more. You become, because you become more connected to it.
Yeah, I think yeah, one of the areas that I often felt, and I don't go out as much as used to, but when I used to go clubbing and kind of being in the music and sort of that midst of 1,000 gay men
exactly.
Just sort of close your eyes and just sort of let that music flow through you. There's
the magic of all that energy in the room. Oh my no! Don't you miss those days of?
I know.
And all those wonderful parties and everything.
Yeah. I had some amazing memories and moments. And sometimes what'll happen is I'll even hear a piece of music, close my eyes, and go back to that moment.
Yeah, so me too.
That's why I think it's a really spiritual space, because it's still with me.
It was spiritual space. I mean, it was wonderful space, and I miss those days. Maybe when we get past COVID, we'll see some more big anthem parties and stuff like that. They're fun. So, yeah. So let me ask you, before we close out, I want to ask people that want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you, Gary?
The easiest way is if you go to LinkedIn and just look up my name as it's spelled right there. It's pretty easy to find because there's not a lot of Kajpusts on LinkedIn. So if you type in Jerry Kajpust, that's definitely going to go. Or you could email me at jerrykajpust@gmail.com. And I'd be glad to set up like an intro call or just a time to chat and just get to know people. I mean, that's another thing that I really love to do, is get to know more people and understand their story. And that's one of the gifts now that I've moved into the coaching world, is I have like this whole new network of people that are now around me, which are all about growing and developing and building and promoting and supporting and caring. And I think that's what we all are looking for,
Yeah.
And that's what I'd be glad to do. So either LinkedIn or on Facebook as well. I mean, I'm on, that one. I'm also on.
Well, on social media. That's the way to do it. It's easier to find that way. So that's like, and you're right. There's not a whole lot of people with that last name. So yeah, give a call out for that. So hold on, I'm going to close this out here, and I want to let everyone know that, as you know, I may or may not know, my name is Martin Coward. I'm a spiritual teacher, prosperity and mindset coach, working with gay, bi, and transgender men, positive entrepreneurs. And we have a Facebook group called Financial Heart Space for gay, bi, and transgender men. And I invite you to join that, and let you know that every Wednesday I do a live workshop. I'm going to be doing one now on a problem-solving technique that I put together. It basically comes out of the first 3 steps of 12 steps. So it works. It's a powerful process. And I'm teaching on that in that group, and that's for gay, bi, and transgender men. I've also got another Facebook group called the Financial Mystic Sanctuary for everybody that they can join, and they can, and I teach and I do things in there as well. And I'm going to be doing a live workshop on that same problem-solving workbook in a couple of weeks. It's going to be a live workshop on a Saturday afternoon for people in that space. So if you like, please join. I would love to have you to stay connected with me and be part of my world, and I can be part of your world inside those 2 Facebook groups. So if you haven't, please join us over there and to learn and get more deeply connected with each other in that space as well. So if nothing else to be said, I'm going to suggest that we all enjoy the rest of the day. Yep. And may love and prosperity prevail.